Welcome to Music Connects People, the podcast about the music and the musicians that bring people together. I'm your host, Tom Jennings, and this week we have a very special show with two people who helped bring an entire community together with an internet-based radio show. Doug and Mel are the co-hosts of Rundgren Radio, a show dedicated to the music of Todd Rundgren. Doug and Mel have interviewed an impressive collection of the musicians Todd worked with over the years, as well as interviewing Todd himself on multiple occasions. They've also produced live shows by Todd and others, and thrown some massive fan parties that bring Rundgren fans from all over the world together. On today's show, they will be the interviewees, and they'll discuss the origins of the Rundgren Radio show and more. Now, if you want further information, you can find it at rundgrenradio.com, and while you're there, don't forget to sign up for their mailing list. If you like today's show, please consider rating it on iTunes and sharing it on social media.
We'll start with, we'll go ladies first. Mel, I guess the first question I want to ask, and if you can sort of tell the story of, from your perspective, of when you and Doug first met. Like, how did you guys meet each other, and then how long did it take for you guys to become partners in crime, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, it's yay for technology. We're talking about 12, 13 years ago. We were both members of the TR Connection, Roger Linder's great website, and we knew each other from the chat boards there and found out that we were both going to be at the same location for a new Cars show down in South Louisiana in the middle of absolute nowhere. So we set up, here's my number, let's all meet for drinks, after the show or before the show. And we did, and we had a great fun night there, seeing a fantastic show, and then I'm going to let Doug take it from there, because then it starts getting into the history of why Rundgren Radio was created in the first place.
All right. So Rundgren Radio is, for those who don't know, is an online radio show that's mostly talk about Todd Rundgren and his connections, many connections. So that started, like Mel said, a while back, over a decade ago. And I did a few shows early on. I was doing it by myself, and then Mel called in, and then she continued to call in and was a consistent caller and had a shtick going for her, asking people how they did their laundry on tour. And so I started getting requests that people liked having a female on there as well. So she moved right on in as a guest host, and the rest is history. So,
and Doug, you use the Blog Talk Radio platform. I mean, that's still kicking around today. I mean, any advice? I mean, I used it for a little bit while. I shifted over to Spreaker. But do you think without a platform like Blog Talk, you would have been able to do this, especially with the ability to have people call in?
No, Blog Talk was the main catalyst for the whole thing, because without it, I don't think we could have pulled it off, because it allows you to play music, so we were able to do samples. I had to learn how to do that. Dan Sticklunas helped me with that using Audacity. So we use that, and people able to call in was a big deal, because the idea was birthed by thinking about interviewing people that were connected to Todd. So it was key. And we're still using Blog Talk, and I've got emails from Spreaker, but Blog Talk's improved, and we're not doing as many shows. It's just easy to keep it there, because we've got pages and pages of archives. We've interviewed over 100 people.
Mm-hmm. And Mel, I mean, I guess that leads me to the next question. I'll throw it to you first, and then, Doug, you can pop in as well. I mean, you guys started landing a ton of interviews. I know just from writing a newspaper column, it's a part-time thing. It's not a full-type thing, but I mean, how are you guys starting to wrangle guests, especially early on when you were just an internet-based radio show? I mean, how were you able to convince people to come on? I mean, was it easy? Was it difficult?
Oh, it depends on who the guest is. I know my first solo show that I did, because Doug had a meeting that he needed to attend on a Tuesday night, and Doug had started to really get the ball rolling with shows every Tuesday night, and that would get kind of stressful, and so he one night said, would you mind hosting a show, finding a guest, and all that. And frankly, I don't remember. I'm sure I just sent an email to Adam Ellis, was who I chose, who was a part-time bass player for the New Cars at the time. And I just sent him an email explaining, what we do, and, we're not pros at this, but just will you come on the show? And he did, and he was charming, and I had done my homework, and I kind of blew him away when I mentioned a band he'd been in, 10 or 15 years earlier when he was just a kid, and he's like, whoa. So I had a great time doing that.
I remember that Adam Ellis show. He had to sit in his car. It was raining. Remember that? Mm-hmm. That show's funny. But it's connected dots. One of the things I really liked about it early on was the hunt to try to find people. And not everybody was as easy as email. I mean, it was extremely difficult to find a few of the guests. And we would use people that we knew that might know somebody. And we had a lot of people suggest guests, and they may have a connection. We had MySpace back then. That helped. We had Michelle was one of our first guests. She was our second guest. She agreed to be the first one, but I didn't want to use her first because I was nervous if it wasn't any good. I would need to get some practice. So we did not do Michelle first. She was second. Bill Bricker was first. He was doing the 40 years of Todd for Rolling Stone. But so we were able to mention that she was involved. She was a very instrumental help with us when we got started. But really, ultimately, the answer to the question is, for how we get guests, it's really the respect that they have for Todd. Even if they don't like him or had a bad experience with him, the musicians respect Todd, and they were more than happy to oblige and talk about him and themselves, of course. So that really played a big role in it. A lot of the early guests we had, and even continuing, when you say Todd Rundgren, it means something to them, and they want to be a part of the show. So we've had, some really big guests and some hard to get guests, but there's been some major players we'll probably never get, but that's all right. We've learned a lot, and we've had Todd on, of course, all of the Utopia members, all of the NAS except for Carson. So we've had a lot.
I mean, that leads me to the next question. Who was the big fish that maybe you wanted to get? I mean, if I was going to pull one off the top of my head, I'd think like a Liv Tyler or somebody like that. But who's maybe the big fish that you could never catch for a show?
I've got an answer. It was a very embarrassing moment for me, but it was during our first birthday celebration out in Las Vegas, and happened to be that same weekend there was a Tubes show. And we all went in a bus and went to go see the Tubes, including Todd and Michelle. Michelle got up on the stage. It was really fun. And afterwards, they all came out, and you could get autographs or your picture taken with the band. And all the guys were super nice, and Doug wanted me to see if we could get Fee Waybill on the show. And Doug pushed me and pretty much said, bat your eyelashes and get him. So I waited in line, and I leaned forward, and I said, Fee, we have this little radio show all about Todd Rundgren and working with Todd Rundgren. Would you like to be a guest on our show at some point? And he leaned even closer to me, just inches away from my nose. And I hope he never hears this, but he said, unless and until you have a tubesradio.com, I will never be on your little show. But then Bill Spooner was right next to him, and he said, I'll be on your show.
Yeah, Faye said a little bit more about it. He wasn't pleased with the Todd experience, as everybody knows. So he had a few other words, but that was a funny one. But I don't know. I mean, Daryl Hall would be nice. Obviously, would have been a big one and a good one. We had John Oates. He was fantastic. I really regret that we couldn't get Carson on because he's obviously passed away now, which is another thing that's kind of special about some of the shows is several of those people have passed away, and we've got archives of their voices and them talking about their experiences with Todd and other things in life, and those are permanent. You can always go back and listen to them. So I can't think of any other, like somebody we were just absolutely freaking out about having, but there's still a long list of people we would love to get. It just, some of them are just too big. Meatloaf, people like that would be great, but we never really pursued that too much. We put forth a little bit of an effort, but we knew that might be over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, those Moogie Klingman shows, just incredible stuff. And I mean, that kind of leads me into, I'd like to get into a more meat and potatoes beginnings of when you guys started doing shows. But I know you didn't put on the shows at the Highline Ballroom, but certainly Rundgren Radio was instrumental in getting Moogie Klingman back with Todd. And I mean, I know you've told the story before, Doug, about but if you wouldn't mind telling the time that Moogie and Todd hooked up together in New York City and then eventually decided on doing those reunion shows.
Sure. I don't know that I have told it on the radio for several reasons, but what happened was Moogie was at a Todd show at the Iridium for the Les Paul tribute show. And that's when I got to meet Moogie face to face and get a picture with him and all that good stuff. We'd have him on the show many times. And he had cancer, and it was clear that he had cancer at the time. And he really wanted to get with Todd because he was trying to get Todd to reunite with him. So he wanted me to introduce him or take him back there to meet Todd. And I knew there was they had a, I don't know, what do you want to call it, a relationship that was strained at the time. So I felt uncomfortable doing it. But I did tell him how he could get back there. So he was able to get backstage and meet with Todd, and Todd shockingly agreed to do the show. So we were involved in that behind the scenes some too. One thing, I tried to talk Moogie into doing it at a different venue because I knew this one would sell out, but he was real concerned about taking a chance because Highline had promised him, a guarantee, and he was bent on doing that. So anyway, it was a great 2 shows, and they did sell out. And I'm glad Moogie got to do it. It's a great story. There's a great picture Chuck Madden took of Todd looking over at him. I mean, what a deal. And of course, after that, it turned into the tour, the Utopia tour. Unfortunately, Moogie couldn't make it, and that was the only sad part about it. But then he passed away, as everybody knows.
Yeah. Well, let's, I'm not sure who wants to field the question of when you decided to branch out from just being a blog talk radio based show to putting on these massive fan events. And we talked about it a little before we went on the air, but I mean, those have been very, very important shows to me and to a lot of people. And again, with keeping with the theme of the show, music connects people. I mean, there were a lot of Todd fans that for years just had not seen each other. And then these shows happened, and it was I say life-changing because really in many ways it was kind of like that reunion of Moogie and Todd. I mean, a lot of fans have been able to reunite. When did you decide to do that, and what were some of the, I mean, there had to be a huge financial risk going into...
Yeah, so that's when Mel and I became quote-unquote business partners, and we had a couple other people helping us with that event, Darnell, Corbett, and then...
You're talking about Vegas, right?
Vegas. So our first party with Vegas, that was our first one with Todd. So let me back up. Actually, we did a show with Chasm first, and it ended up being a DVD show. Doug Kennedy participated. Jesse Grass were on stage with him, and we had a kid that we really liked a lot that had a very familiar sounded a lot like Todd and was going in that direction, actually, Alec Razor. So we did that in Georgia, and we didn't have a clue. It was a small show, but luckily Grady Mose saved the day, which he also did in Vegas because he's the sound guy. And Dave Knife, another fan, and Kerry Knife, who at the time was running Chasm's merch, I believe, they got in on it with us as well. And we somehow pulled it off. We sold out, and it was a small crowd, but it was meant to be. And somehow we got through it without anybody making any noise and got a good DVD out of it. Dave did a great job and edited it and everything, and Grady helped out. So that was it. But as far as I think the main thing, what you're looking for as far as how we started connecting people, and in my opinion and estimation on this thing, was Vegas, our first Todd gig. And I would love to take full credit that we invented that concept, but ultimately what happened was Todd stock, and everybody was doing the Todd fans MySpace TRC, but had not ever met each other, a lot of people. So several hundred people went to Todd stock, and it was so unique, and people liked each other so much and enjoyed each other's company that they were eager to get back together. So 6 months later, about what it was, maybe less than that.
No, it was about 3.
3 months later, you're right. So, that was August. Yeah, it wasn't but 2 or 3 months later. I was at a Todd concert in Houston, and Steve Harstein started bringing up. He had a good connection with Todd. He thought he could pull it off us doing a private concert, and he helped us out, and we were able to pull that off. So Steve and Darnell and Mel and I think that was it, Mel. We worked on it, and then Grady saved the day because we had to get sound equipment. We had to find a venue in Vegas, and we ended up getting 100 people, and everybody, it was expensive because it was just a small group, but it was pretty wild. It was pretty fun. It was a really good party, but the basis of it was people wanting to connect and get together because of the music and because of Todd. But it was more than that, and it has become bigger than that. But the key thing is everybody's a Todd fan. Everybody appreciates Todd's music. Ultimately, the key is the Todd factor. You got to have that. You had to have Todd stock. You had to have social media and things like that for everybody to get together. But when I went to Toddstock, I was amazed at how many people had never met each other that were very active online. And there were other groups. There were Garf, and there was Todd Fest West, and CLB had a party with Todd in their backyard. There was a lot of this going on. But nationally, I think that had not happened. These were more regional type things. The Garf maybe not, but it probably was mostly East Coaster, I'd guess, because it was near Philly, I think, when they met with Ruth. But there's always these pockets of fans that go to concerts in New York or Philadelphia or Ohio or whatever. What is get people to come from all over the place and really all over the world, ultimately, when we started doing bigger things. So I'm sure we'll get to that at some point.
Yeah, I guess was the one after Vegas, was that Wizard of True Star? I mean, that was the first Rundgren Radio event. I wasn't able to go make it to Toddstock, and I didn't make it to Vegas.
We actually did a New Year's Eve gig in Philly, which was another semi-private, we called it, which was another really special show. We had not got involved with Todd's business end at that point. We were working through Michelle mainly, and we had a wedding. 2 fans got married there that had been married but were unaware that it wasn't legal for some reason. I don't remember the backstory, but decided to get legally married together with other fans. Prairie and Chasm participate in it. And if you think about that story for a minute, that's really out there, because where else would you hear of something like that where music fans got together and threw a wedding for 2 of the fans? Yeah. And early on in this wasn't like some of us knew them for 10, 20 years. Some of these people were brand new to us. So several of the fans put this together. It was really fun, and some great memories from that, and what a party. The AWATS was when it really got big. That's when we did our first official, going through the right channels, large event. AWATS being a Wizard of True Star album live, and that was in Akron, Ohio, to start it.
In 2009.
Yeah, to this day, the most I've ever paid for a concert ticket, $250 for a front row center in Akron, and it was worth every penny of it.
Absolutely, I think it was more than that, though. That was really a wild situation, because we still didn't really know a ton about what we were doing, and we had no idea how many people would show up. So we were charging a pretty penny because we were worried it would just be the clique or the cult or whatever you want to call it, just the hardcore fans. So we priced it accordingly, and then miraculously we sold that thing out. And we got ahead on it because of that, and we took that money and decided to throw a free party, which was not cheap, but was worth every penny, because we hadn't gone into it intending to make any money. So we said, let's take some of this money and let's put it into a party. And we had several hundred people. I think it was over 400 people. And I'll quit hogging and let Mel talk some about it. But the one thing I remember the most about that party, and I think applies to this program you have here, is that people would come up to me. I know they did this to Mel as well. And, they would thank us and say they were having fun. But the main message where they were telling us is, we have never been able to get together with so many fans that are like-minded and love Todd Rundgren. Because as all Rundgren fans know, for the most part, he's not as big as he should be, but the people that like him really like him. They love Todd Rundgren. So there were people that had never got together with this kind of party and this kind of crowd. And I think at that point we just knew we had a winning program. We had people doing unique things. We had Cindy Mills made a map, an international field map, because we had people coming from all over the world. We had Japan, Scotland, England. I mean, it was a big, big deal for Todd to do that album. And the party was a game changer for us because people really appreciated being able to get together, not just go to a concert, not just go to dinner together, but party together with hundreds of Todd fans.
Mm-hmm. And it was really a group effort because Doug and I didn't really know what we were doing. And here we had this ballroom that we arranged through the hotel for this party, and we asked for fans to help. And, we had Dr. Tunes. He brought in all of this sound equipment, DJ type stuff and videos, and then he would take pictures of the people in the crowd and then flash them up on the screen during the night. We had people designing what are they called? Table centerpieces for all these big round tables. We had 20 of those or whatever. Well, what are you going to decorate with? And so each fan would choose a song from that album and then design very, very creative artwork for the table decorations. So not really realizing what we were doing at the time, but that is kind of how we got people involved. And we had people that made little trinkets, little necklaces or pins, and they would set up their little merch tables, so to speak, and pass out little trinkets to people. I know there was a license plate cover that I think Marianne Minnick, had those made up and was given out, and T-shirts, and it was just a group effort. It really was. And it was so fun to look out over that ballroom and see literally hundreds of people laughing and joking, and it was like a family, although better. This is the family you choose
to go see. Yeah, and one of the things that I really liked about it is some fans would step up, but we had some that wanted to videotape it and stream it, and we were able to do that. And there's interviews with Rebop when he was younger. There's people on there that have since passed that we can go back and see, hear them talk, see their face. You could see some of the party. This is over a decade old now, right? Or close. So it's nice to have that kind of a memory right there online where you can go see it. And then that also started, which has been a big thing for us, and Mel's in charge of this side of the operation. But we started doing cakes for these parties, and calling it our birthday party because they were around when we were founded, and that was just an excuse to have a theme, really. When we started doing that, it wasn't the original intent. But for AWATS, we had cakes that looked like that were basically had the album covers on them. We had two that were album shape. They were the albums with the the centerpiece in them with the song list. Just
they looked like a vinyl record.
Mm-hmm. We did those actually in Vegas too. We had the guitar pick, was still one of my favorites, and we had one with the Arena album on it. That's when it was released. So cakes have become a big part of it too. We always talk about that when we do it, but it really started a fun experience, and we ended up doing another Labor Day show and a few others in Akron, and they've always been big hits.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the cake because I know that's just been a huge part of the ceremony, and something I don't know. It's almost like the big reveal when the cake shows up. It's interesting to hear that first story because Mel's always associated with the cake. In fact, my dogs must love it. If I don't even hear them barking in the background. The ones that's allowed
is creative. We've had some really very unique cakes. Some have been better than others, but overall, we've had some spectacular cakes. The one of the Akron Civic still blows me away how great it was.
That one was good with the marquee and that one was one of my favorites. Although I have since learned we don't need to use black icing because it turns everyone's teeth black. But it's still one of my favorites. Another one was when we did one of the orchestra shows, and I don't remember if it was in Rockford or if it was the one in Akron, but it was a cello cake. It was a life-sized cello cake. Mm-hmm. And it was very realistic. It was beautiful. And I have to thank all the wonderful bakeries that we've used. And usually those come from referrals from fans, especially if we're doing it in a town we've never been in, such as Rockford, Illinois. And they'll refer us to a really good bakery. And it's all done by telephone and sketches. And every bakery has really, they have a lot of fun making these cakes, and they usually taste really good, is what I've been told. And it's just that, again, another group effort, because I'm no artist, but I have something in my head, and I'll describe it to some cake baker miles away, and then they deliver in many ways. Yes.
Yep. So that's a lot of the things we've done, we've had to help. And, we kind of look at Rundgren Radio as not just Doug and Mel, it's a group. Bill Bricker came up with our logo, and we try to do that on a cake at our birthday parties. I think we've done it every time, but we may get away from that. It's not really it's just gotten so much bigger. It's not really about Rundgren Radio. It's about fans getting together and throwing a big party. So that's kind of the theme. That's what people know and recognize, and they want to go to it when we do it. So we're going to keep doing those and, continue to do some crazy stuff with them. We always try to do something unique. For example, as you know, last year we did a GoFundMe and got enough money to restore Maurice, which was the Sphinx from the Raw tour that Utopia did in the 70s. And, man, it looked good. And the fan bands got to play in front of it. Most everybody got pictures with it. Chasm and Willie came by and got to see it and get pictures with it. Some other banners and stuff that Bill had made, Bill Bricker had made, stand-ups and that type of thing. And we haven't even gotten to the fan band thing yet, but that became part of this too. I think mainly after the camps that Todd did, he had some music camps, and we discovered there were some good musicians. And then we had, actually, you know what? That's not true. That helped us with the fan band. But the tribute band started when Gary Backstrom and John Pohida started doing shows in Boston. Gary started the first one, Road to Utopia Band. And we went to Boston for a tour and had both of them play. And it just was a blast. And they've been part of our many of our parties, and then Secret Society started another fan band, and they've been in our last 3 parties, and we've got some new ones we're going to debut at our next party. And so we brought in a whole new element for that, of musicians that might not have been participating in the Todd world or the parties, but when they got hold of that, they started coming around and they started seeing how much fun it was, and they've become a part of the family as well.
So I just guess one story. I remember about 35 minutes, so probably just a couple more questions. But and we should probably do this again, maybe in another 3 months. I think there's still a lot of stuff we haven't touched on. But one of the moments that I remember the most as far as connecting people and some emotion was Eddie Zine, who recently passed away, when you were able to somehow get him connected up with the orchestra shows. And I mean, the guy was just a heavy-handed drummer. He was just so amazing. But I think just the emotion of seeing him kind of live out that big fan dream. I mean, there's been fan camps and all those other things, but to actually be able to sit on stage and play a show with Todd, I mean, that was a pretty emotional moment. And I think you guys, if I remember correctly, you were both instrumental in hooking up Eddie with the orchestra show. Didn't that happen through fan connections?
Yes, he was actually got to play 2 nights with the orchestra, and then we brought him back for the 2 nights of the, I guess that was early on, the Unpredictable shows, when we did the 2 at the Agora. So, in Cleveland. But when we do the orchestra shows, they don't really have, rock pop drummers. So they said, we could pick one. And at the time, we needed one that was affordable. And Eddie had been talking to us, I think, and he was way willing to do it, get the drums and everything, because he had a relationship with, I think, Pearl. And it was definitely a great moment for him, and the fans loved it. And those were some really good orchestra shows. That Rockford Symphony Orchestra was fantastic. We had a great venue. That was 2 great nights. That was the first time we'd done it in the United States. And
I remember it was important that whoever we hired to be the drummer had to be able to read charts. And apparently not many drummers do, but Eddie was like, "Oh, I can do it. And he sure did. And it showed on his face. He smiled the whole time.
Yep. So, yeah, that was a great deal, and I wish we could have used him down the road. And we used Kevin Elman one time, and Prairie, I think, another time. We like to mix it up for marketing purposes, I guess, for lack of a better term. And that's, some of the fans love Prairie, and they love Kevin Elman, and they love Eddie Zine. So, but Eddie was so good and so in tune with Todd's songs, because he probably listens to them over and over again, that he was a great choice. I mean, he really knew it, and he led the orchestra basically over in Rockford. I mean, they didn't miss a beat. It was really good. So that was a special moment. And we haven't had, trying to think, we haven't really had other fans get involved too much with that. That's kind of a slippery slope, because there's so many that would love to do it, and we don't really control that all the time. So we just got lucky on that one and got to bring him in. So that was special.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie had a background he played with the Monkees, or at least, I think he was with the Monkees, and he played with Hall & Oates and all that other stuff. So we just happened to be a Todd fan. But just a great guy, man. I was really sad to hear that he passed a little young, but like you said, in the last 10 years, I mean, that's the downside of us all getting to know each other, is that we got to kind of be sad when people leave us. But at least we get to spend time getting to know these people before they leave us.
Isn't technology wonderful? I mean, the fact that someone that I met in Hawaii in 2008 and have become a friend, very, very good friends, have their phone numbers, the whole bit, and then I see them when I go to Australia, and it's just like, "Hey, how you doing?" It's a magical thing, and it's hard to explain to people. But what I guess the closest thing that I can liken it to is the Jimmy Buffett fans or the Grateful Dead fans, that they do get to know each other, and they get together once a year, or some of my Jimmy Buffett friends, they do like the whole tour and do all the parking lot stuff before and after the show with the same people over and over again. Mm-hmm. But of course, those are much bigger groups of fans, so they have to get in their own little groups, kind of like the Todd fans. But I'll tell you, I've met some of the most wonderful people since I've been involved in this, that I never dreamt that my middle-aged years would be so wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, we've had a lot of people, if you look, that are active in the community now that met through some type of Rundgren Radio event. Of course, that's going to happen after 10 years. But I remember Rockford, for example, there were a couple of fans over there that didn't even know each other. And they're very active still today in the Todd community. We had Jill Mingo, everybody knows probably, came into AWATS for the first time. That was her launch. And she ended up, for the next tour, the Todd Healing Tour, doing a bus called the Golden Goose, which a lot of people who rode that bus from Akron to Muskegon, Michigan, and then I think to Indian St. Louis, they have really come on board after that because of that event. It's just these little things where people come on board and they get to meet a few people, and then there's a domino effect. And Facebook has changed that as well. I mean, people have made a name for themselves, I guess, for lack of a better term, by posting on Facebook and then starting to come to events and going to concerts, and then all of a sudden, they're a big part of the group. So there's a lot of different ways people can do it, and we try to provide that as much as we can. The more the merrier, as John Powhite likes to say, let all the children sing. So we've done 41 Todd concerts now, And we've had, numerous parties. And we even, in 2014, made a decision because we were having trouble getting a Todd gig, I think. I can't remember why, maybe the Ringo tour or something, whatever. But we wanted to do something that Labor Day weekend. And there was a camp, so it was tight. We were running a big risk. But we were able to get people to come to that event despite there not being a Todd gig. And we had Chasm and Brent Bourgeois. And people that went absolutely loved it and said, this is viable. We can do this. We don't always have to have Todd there. I mean, again, I'm not saying anything negative about Todd. He's the central theme. He's the reason we're there. The music. But we're celebrating the music ultimately. And at those parties, when you have tribute bands or people that are associated with Todd, like Brent Bourgeois and Chasm Sultan, you're still celebrating the music of Utopia and Todd Rundgren. And so we did that again in 2016, I think it was. We went to Boston and did another one, and it went over very well. We had several guests: Bobby Strickland, Stookie, and Tony, which is another situation of bringing somebody back into the fold for a while. One of my favorite stories is going back to our guest. Was Frog Labat. We had him. You talk about a find. That was like finding a needle in a haystack. We got him. And the Sales Brothers called in. They hadn't talked to him in decades. And you just listen to them talking. They're lighting up, talking about their times back then. It just was really something else. And we got a hold of Dave Mason, not the Dave Mason of Traffic, but Dave Mason of Utopia, the first version. Extremely difficult to find. I was so happy when we found him. What a super nice guy. And just a couple of years later, so he passed away. But we got documentation of him that no books have, no nothing. We got it on a show for an hour or so. And he was a great, nice guy with lots of good memories of touring with Todd and playing with Todd. Not touring necessarily. They did a few shows. But, doing the album with Todd and Moogie and the rest of them. So it's been a good road for that kind of thing, for reuniting people in other ways, not just fans. Some of the artists.
Yeah, no, great stuff. And we'll wrap it up. And obviously, I'm sure you've been thanked a million times, like you said, people approaching you in shows and everything. But thank you guys for everything. I love the shows. I love the live events. I love just everything. And I think you kind of hit on it earlier, where talk about being a Todd fan. Sometimes you feel like you're on an island, and it's nice for all of us to kind of occupy our own little utopia every now and then as a group. And you said the music certainly brings us together, but we've all wound up becoming friends, and even our tastes in music are different, because some people like the early stuff, they like the middle stuff, and everything in between. But at the end of the day, we just enjoy each other's company, which I think is really cool. So we'll wrap it up with what's in the future. I know we've got something coming up in Cleveland that my fingers are crossed I'm going to be able to make that Saturday thing. That's pretty limited, but you kind of teased out there that there may be something in the works in the fall. Are you willing to flesh that out a little bit, or should we just wait for the surprise announcement?
No, that's a valid question, and I'll let Mel talk about her plans too. I just know that, Todd kept doing Todd Stocks every 5 years. He's done 2 of them now since the first one. He's done these band camps, whatever you want to call them, band camps 4 times, I think. And so new people have come into the fold that he's responsible for. But not everybody can go to those or can afford those. So when we do these parties, I think last year it was $59. People can handle that, and more people can come that don't necessarily get to go to the camps. But we have benefited from those as well, of getting people into the community. And some of those people from Todd Stock will be in some of the future bands that we have at our shows, at our parties, our events. So the future for us, what I see right now, is what we did similar to last year, which was tag on to a Todd show or 2 shows where we're not promoting them, but he's there in town, just like we're doing. The next event we have is in Cleveland. Todd's playing there on a Sunday and Monday. On that Saturday, we're throwing a party. And that's what we did last year during the Utopia tour. There's lots of reasons for that, but ultimately when Todd got a relationship recently with Live Nation, as you can imagine, we're not going to compete with Live Nation. I mean, they can do full tours with him. And then he had Ringo. He had the Utopia tour, the book. There's so many things he's got going on that we're really not a player in the promotion side of it, unless, you know, something special comes along and we have an opportunity. But that doesn't mean we can't throw parties, and we can do it without him and without a concert, or we can continue to do it with, which obviously would be our choice. So we're waiting for the big party, the birthday party deal. We're waiting to hear what the next tour is going to be. And there's different rumblings on. I don't really know what's going to happen for sure, but I'm sure something good will happen for the second half of the year. And we'll try to time it closer to our actual birthday. But it's not, doesn't have to be that way, just like it wasn't last year. But we're definitely going to have a birthday bash some way, somehow. And since we're doing this one in Cleveland, Mel and I have bannered around, and it depends on the tour. So this isn't a lock. But we want to go back to the West Coast at some point. You know, we did an AWATS tour there, 4 shows, and we just haven't been able to do a lot over there. And it'd be nice to go back and provide a party make it easy for them to be able to go to a party versus flying to Ohio or Boston or whatever, East Coast, Midwest, that type of thing. But that's to be determined. Just know this. We will be throwing that party one way or another for people who are interested, and we'd love to have you there. We're going to debut the first Todd Rundgren tribute band that's all female. We'll have Secret Society. We'll try to get the Hermits. We'll try to have a fan band. We'll try to have other special guests. We also will be preparing for next year, possibly Todd getting the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That event would be in Cleveland, so we try to throw a party around that possibly, like we were going to do in New York this year. So that's what I see. Mel, what do you see for the future?
The same thing. I'm trying to decide if I should say this or not. Doug and I have a very interesting relationship. It's kind of like a marriage. Sometimes Doug gets these crazy ideas and I have to put the brakes on. There's other times where I might have an idea and he has to put the brakes on. So everything is fluid. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
But I know that I enjoy those parties maybe more than anybody else does, because they're just so fun to plan. And so I'm hoping that we get to plan something really special for Labor Day weekend or somewhere near there, and that it is west of the Mississippi River.
Yeah, we know we're not going to be promoting a Todd gig ourselves on Labor Day weekend this year, so that's all we know at this point. But Todd may be doing something around that time, you know, somewhere. Maybe we could surround it, but that's all. We're not going to know anything until we get to find out about the next tour. So that's what we'll wait on. But that's true what Mel says. You know, sometimes we have to sit back and really think through some things. We get crazy ideas. And I got to give credit. Jamie Van Wert and Tim Longfellow came up with this idea for this upcoming party. They were talking about doing it in Akron, and I immediately thought, why? We got Dante's, which they did not go to last year, but a lot of us did for an impromptu jam session. It was a great, cool venue in Cleveland. It's 2.3 miles from the venue Todd will be performing in. So it took off real quick, and it's going to sell out probably, I don't know, within a few days.
Is that the place we went to in the basement that I was at that?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Oh,
yep.
Yeah, love that venue. Love it.
Yeah, you got to perform in that venue.
I
right?
did, yes,
right.
Yes.
What a great place. I mean, what a great place to have a Todd party, too. Todd fan party. So it's actually turned into a Secret Society. Jamie and Tim are going to mostly do things together, some, you know, ballad or slower type songs that keyboard and singing can get away with. But there's going to be some guest appearances by guitarists, and some of the Secret Society guys, Bruce and Dan, will do a few songs too with them. So it's going to turn into something really special and really good.
Nice. Well, great. Well, thank you guys for spending an afternoon with me, and you know, we'll definitely see out what shows. I think I'll probably catch you at the Atlanta show for the Todd Rundgren gigs there. Doug, I don't know if I'll see you there, Mel, but I know at some point we'll all be together in the same room before the end of the year. It just kind of happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure will.
Thank you, Tom. This has been enjoyable.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, very good.
Thank you for listening to Music Connects People. If you have any guest suggestions, please email me at Tom, T-H-O-M, at caroniamediagroup.com. That's C-A-R-O-N-I-A, mediagroup.com. Until next time, hope you enjoy good friends, good times, and some great music.